go now live to Brussels, where the Ryanair Chief Executive Michael O'Leary is waiting to speak to us. Michael, welcome to you. You've cut capacity to Italy by a quarter from mid-March until early April. Is it only your Italian routes where demand has fallen?
Yeah, good afternoon, Ian. Good to talk to you. Principally, the decline in bookings in the last week has been focused on the Italian domestic routes and routes to and from northern Italy. There are some minor cuts in some other areas, but mainly it's focused on Italy. And we've taken out about a day's worth of flying in the last 2 weeks of March and the first week of April at the moment. We keep the second week of April under review. But at this point in time, we don't see any impact on those bookings in the second and third week of April, which is the Easter school holidays. It looks at this point in time like people will continue to travel during that period. So it'll be the 3 weeks prior to Easter. There might be a little bit of discretionary travel after Easter, but it's an evolving situation. We manage it on a day-to-day basis.
So really, you see demand being depressed for only quite a short period of time, really?
It depends on how it develops over the next number of weeks. I mean, I'm reasonably optimistic. I think it will be reasonably short-lived. Remember, we're coming out into the spring-summer period in Europe. That itself will help to limit the spread of a flu-like virus like the COVID-19. People are, obviously, there's been a reduction in the short term in travel. People are taking sensible measures. I think the good thing about the outbreak across many European countries in the last week or two has been you're getting much more sensible government information being communicated. Hand washing, taking sensible precautions. If you feel you have the symptoms of a flu, self-isolate. Those kind of sensible, calm measures will be much more effective in combating the spread of COVID-19 than, for example, cancelling football matches or big public events. So I think we're calling for calm. Yes, there will be a decline short-term in travel, but I think it will be reasonably short-lived, and I hope it will be reasonably short-lived.
What kind of no-shows have you seen lately on flights?
We've seen no-shows over the last number of days of upwards of up to 50% on particularly some of the Italian domestic routes. I mean, Italy has been the country most affected by this. There has been a significant disruption to economic activity in Italy. We think that's likely to spread for the next week or two, which is why, again, we think we've taken out a sensible reduction in a small number of flights in the last 2 weeks of March, the first week of April. But we would hope to see, some of the hysteria taken out of the coverage of the COVID-19 virus outbreak that we've seen over the last week. More accurate government and chief WHO information being communicated and help us to fend off some of the, frankly, lunacy that gets communicated on social media.
You think people are losing their heads a bit then?
Look, it's the natural thing, people always panic, they overreact. If you look at the numbers of people, thankfully, even in the UK, in a population of 65 million people, what have we got today? 51 people who have confirmed cases. I mean, the numbers here are tiny. That does require a sensible and proportionate response. It does require government information, both in the UK and all other EU countries. But it also requires people to be sensible. I mean, I'm here at a conference, the A4E conference today in Brussels. We're all hand washing, using disinfectants, taking those sensible measures. But there's no reason why, sensible economic activity can't and will continue. But whatever happens, you've been here, I've been here before. We had 9/11, we've had SARS, we've had these kind of pestilences visited on the industry and the economy generally before. They're generally usually short-lived, and then people will return to normal pretty quickly. The key challenge for our industry is, will there be casualties in the next number of weeks if there's a big drop-off in bookings and some airlines are clearly under pressure in terms of cash flow, and we think it will lead to further failures in the next number of weeks.
Michael, you mentioned 9/11 there. I mean, the stock price reaction for companies like Ryanair, IAG, EasyJet, I mean, it's not dissimilar to what we saw after September the 11th. Have investors gone a bit over the top?
I suspect so, but as you know yourself, the market tends towards you have hedge funds in there, you have excessive volumes of people going short, going long. You see much more volatility in the stock market these days on, short-term news flow. Like, frankly, if you're not selling your shares, it doesn't matter. We take a long-term view of these kind of issues in Ryanair. We are still investing in new aircraft. We're still waiting for the delivery of the 737 MAX aircraft later this year, Ian. In fact, Airbus called up last week and wanted to know, could we take some new aircraft earlier than 2025? And we said, as always, if the price is right, we'd buy new aircraft today, tomorrow, next week. Ryanair will be here. We have 4 billion in cash on the balance sheet. We will work our way through this over the next number of weeks or number of months, whatever it is, and we will still be Europe's largest and fastest growing airline, both before, during and after the COVID-19 outbreak.
Now, you mentioned events being cancelled. Obviously, you're a great man of the turf. Will you still be going to Cheltenham as usual this year?
If it's on, I certainly hope to be there. I was also hoping to go to a couple of Irish rugby internationals, but unfortunately the Irish government, I think in an overreaction, cancelled the Italian rugby match in Dublin this week. There's still 2,500 Italian rugby supporters travelling to Dublin for the weekend anyway. So cancelling the event has, not been a sensible or proportionate measure. I'm pleased to see the rest of the Six Nations matches in Twickenham and in Paris are going ahead, and I'm very hopeful that Cheltenham will go ahead next week, and that the less disruption we have to people's lives and to people's normal economic activity, the better. I think the key role government can play in this is communicate information calmly, sensibly. Let's not have panicked or irrational or panic measures.